Yo, what's up, family? Hope everybody having a good day. Come on here to give you guys a recap of week 28 focus, which was on relationships. So the premise of this week's focus was on around chapter, Luke 10:27. Look, couldn't get that out. So Luke 10:27, let me read that to you. So it says, and he answering said, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy strength, and with all thy mind, and thy neighbor as thyself. So just in summation of that, that's just basically saying we're putting God first in our relationship, in our life. And so with this focus this week being on relationships, like we just really drove that home, like understanding the importance of putting God first. And when we put God first, that is the only relationship that enables us to be able to be impactful in every other relationship in our lives. So I'll give you an example of that. When we have a relationship starting on that foundation with God, we understand one, how to love ourselves. Why? Because we see how God loves us, how he treats us. So that allows us to love ourselves, to have self-love. But then now, again, at the end of that verse, as thyself. So now our neighbor. So how are we treating our neighbors, the people that are around us? So whether that's in your community, your actual neighbors next to you, in your apartment area complex, your home, like how are you treating the people that are around you, or at your job, your coworkers, people that you see within the community, at a grocery store, restaurants? How are you treating people? Because if you're putting God first, you understand how that relationship is and how he treats you. So then now you're treating yourself right with love. Then now how are you treating the people around you as well? And it's important to have this understanding, because once we have that foundation in God, we can then now go into the world and navigate every segment of our lives with that understanding of, like, God is the integrity of me. God is the integrity in my heart. So how I move and I operate, I can't even do certain things because of my relationship with God. And that's important because that keeps us out of a lot of trouble. That keeps us from going down paths that are not meant for us, that God did not design for us to go on. And the beautiful thing about it is, and again, going back to the relationship that we have with God, even if we go to the right, we go to the left, instead of staying on that straight path that God has for us, he loves us even when we're doing that. Like, hey, I love you, but I don't agree that you're doing that. You're going to have some consequences that come with that. But when you come back and you get back on this path that I have for you, I'm here to welcome you with open arms. So now we get that love from God. So then we have to be able to exemplify that to other people. It's going to be people in our lives that we love, that we put, at a high place in our life, that we value that relationship, that are going to do things that are going to disappoint us. They're going to let us down, similar to what we do with God. But we have to be able to say, you know what, I welcome that person back, to still love that person, to be forgiving, to be loving. But the only difference is because God is the ultimate God, and that's why he is the goal that we're trying to get to. Sometimes in life, people are going to do things where you might have to say, hey, I love this person, but I love them from a distance. You know what I mean? Because sometimes if we get too close, it can end up hurting us again. And that's where we have to use the discernment, versus where God, because he is God, he is the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. He already know there's nothing that we can do to separate our love from God. But that just shows the goal in mind of how we should go about life. So it's so important for us to have that mentality, because there's going to be times in life where we have to be able to represent God in those difficult moments of life. When we're in a situation where we're not getting treated the right way, maybe your boss at work is not giving you the validation that you need, but you still got to go in and do your job every day. You got to punch the clock, knowing like the person I'm working for doesn't value my work. But that doesn't mean that I change my effort, that I change the way that I show up, because at the end of the day, we know that we're not working for our boss. We're not working for that company. We're working for God. But the only way that we're able to know those things is going back to the foundation of having that relationship with God being the first thing. Because when we do have that foundation, we operate on a different function system than everybody else that's around us. But the beautiful thing is, once you come in contact with somebody and they speak the same language, you hear them at work and they say, they might sprinkle in some little things to let you know in code that I'm a follower of Christ as well. And then now you understand, like, this is why we're on the same page. And I love when that happens. I love when I'm talking to somebody and they drop something that's like, oh, hold on, that's from the Bible, hold on. And then now it's a connection there, because now I see why you was moving the way you move at work. I see why you do the things that you do, because we know that we are a representation of Christ. So again, like, just having that understanding about that as it relates to relationships. And then it kind of segued into, we just talking about a professional standpoint, but now from a personal standpoint, like, we always talk about, in the world, people say, oh, I got to find my wife, find my husband, like, think like a man. And, all these different things out there as far as like relationship one-on-one. But oftentimes the biggest thing that is missing from relationships is the foundation of God. Like, I remember, dating before I found my wife, and like, that was like my main thing, like my main question, like, yo, like, do you have a relationship with God? And I'm serious about that. And the reason why I was so serious about that, because one, I wanted to be evenly yoked with somebody. I don't want to have, for lack of better terms, like a build-a-bear person. I don't want to have spiritually. I'm not talking about physical or nothing like that, or emotionally. I'm talking about spiritually. I want to understand, like, you have your own personal relationship with God, and I have my own personal relationship with God. Then the reason why that was important for me while I was dating was because if you don't have a personal relationship with God, how are you going to have a relationship with me? If you don't have a relationship with the person who created you, and you don't have no time to acknowledge that person, how can you acknowledge me as your boyfriend, as a person that's going to be your husband? How can you do that? Because that's just backwards. Like, if you're not acknowledging the person who created you and showing them love, how are you going to do that to me? And eventually, at some point, that's going to come to a breaking point. Maybe when an argument happens, or a disagreement, or something's not being done that you don't like, now that love is differently shown, because now we can't even go back to the rules. What are the rules of this relationship? If we don't have any rules and it's not the foundation of God, anything goes. It could be whatever I think is good, whatever you think is good. But the beautiful thing about it is, when you're in a relationship and you're evenly yoked and the foundation is God, we can go back to this Bible and open it up and say, okay, this is what you're supposed to be doing as a wife. This is what I'm supposed to be doing as a husband. This is what we're supposed to be doing as parents, as sons and daughters of God. That's the manual. But if we don't have that foundation, we can't go to that point. And sometimes it's sad to see it when you see people who are unevenly yoked, and then they spent so much time in this relationship where they like, I don't want to start over. But ultimately, if we would have just stayed on the course of doing what God told us to do from the jump, then we would have never been in that situation. So sometimes we put ourselves in these tough situations, again, when we go back to the core relationship, putting God first. And when you put God first, it allows you to then date with a purpose, and then be in a marriage that has purpose. That right there is a game changer. You know what I mean? So, and I realized that, again, from my own personal testimony, like, just finding a wife and finding somebody that is equally yoked, that, even if I'm down, like, all right, let's read the Bible, or hey, let's pray, or they're going to pray over you, or hey, what can I, like, it just takes it to the relationship to a whole nother dynamic, because now you're bonding on a spiritual level, emotional, physical, mental, like every level. You checking all the boxes. But when you there spiritually with somebody, like, there's nothing like that. And I heard this in premarital, where it's the triangle of love. Like, so you have God here at the top of this triangle, and you have, the spouses in the bottom corner. The only way for the spouses to get closer is to get closer to God. And I love that, because it's not about getting closer to each other. So we could get close to each other, but then if we away from God, we missing the focus. We're missing the mark. And the mark is that we have to go towards God. So again, that was our conversation that we had today. Another great conversation. Shout out to the people who came on the call today. And if you're interested in looking and joining the Devotional Book Club, please reach out. All you got to do is shoot me an email, information right in the description, and then we get you added. Start joining, start fellowshipping, and also the link for the book will be there as well. We're on week 28, so look, we got 52 weeks, man. So come on and jump in, join the party, 30 minutes every Sunday. Hope that y'all have a great week. Peace.